Joining me now, Joanna Greenwald is a criminal defense attorney and former prosecutor. She practices in New York and New Jersey. Joanna, it is always great to see you. How are you this morning?
I'm doing great, Lisa. Better seeing you today.
You're so sweet. So, who has the better part of this case, do you think, just looking at it based on what we know so far? Prosecution or defense?
Prosecution.
Really? Why do you say that?
I know how I always talk about the psyche of jurors, and how, especially with police officers, come in, especially if they're in their police uniform, that everybody looks up to police officers. But I'll say it now, I know you'll see emails. Guess what? Sometimes they don't tell the truth. And in the front row, as Jean had said before, you have the mom. You have a mother who has a life sentence that's already been given to her. And the jurors will keep looking at that mother. And as long as the prosecution keeps making that mother, if the mother can withstand the pain of hearing all this, sit there in the front row, especially when they have a civil action that potentially had been already settled, then I think the prosecution, with the black box, because you actually have forensic evidence that shows that he was speeding, and they have sworn statements from him in the past that will come to light, that will show that he will know whether or not, if he was familiar with the area. They actually have a bunch on his side. The reason why he's not taking any plea and why we are at the point that we are now is that this is a precedent-setting case. Because generally speaking, policemen, troopers in fact, are usually held not liable when they are in the pursuit of going after someone.
That's right.
So that's why they're going to keep saying, as Jean said, opening argument, that they're going to keep saying that maybe he was going after somebody, that there's an unknown person that was out there. Because once you do that, then might as well just say, boom, he's off the hook.
Well, we may see, yeah, okay, I hear you. We may see that speeder that he was chasing later on in the trial. I understand that speeder does exist. It's a tough case, two real sides in this case, in my opinion. The head of the state police union has said that Trooper Higbee was heartbroken about the deadly crash. And police is standing at attention out of respect for the jury finally in. Joanna Greenwald, on the defense side, the first witness is sure to be an emotional one, the grandfather of the two girls who lost their lives.
That's right.
On the defense side, what would you do in cross-examination with a family member like the grandfather?
Treat him very delicately, because you know that what he has to say, the last time he saw his grandchildren, were they running an errand for his wife. And so as a defense attorney, you have to treat him delicately, but also keep it short and sweet, and ask the certain questions that you feel that you need to get out there, because there isn't a whole lot that's going to come out of that, because you're not going to try to say something negative about the victims, the children.
Maybe not ask him any questions
at all,
since he doesn't really shed any light on the intent and on the accident itself. All right, we have live action in the courtroom. Let's go in and listen. Is so compelling. It's just such an ordinary moment of life. The milk was sour. They send the two teenage girls out together to get the milk. They probably sent them together thinking they'd be safer if they went together.
A mile from their home.
A mile from their home. A grandfather actually drives by the scene of the crash, not realizing who was involved, sees the flashing lights. What do you make of his testimony?
I'm listening to it, and just as a human being, and if I don't wear my legal hat, but as a human being, listening to him, pretending I was a juror, it's riveting. You see an older gentleman holding it together, being as a man, being the first one on the scene, holding his wife back, his daughter, who's the mother of his grandchildren. He calls them his children. If you don't notice that, he keeps saying them. He calls them his children. He says it over and over, that my children, my children. And he went there, and you see this man, and he says, I had to step back when he saw a body in the street. And as a human being, and then as a juror, you're listening going, this tough man could take that. That was too much. And and we keep listening to all these things. A lot of things he's attesting to have nothing to do with anything.
Right.
And there's no objection. The other side is not standing saying irrelevant.
Well, because they have to be careful, don't they, Joanna? They don't want to look like fools. They don't want to look cruel. And ultimately, it's not going to matter to the verdict, so you let them talk.
That's exactly when you asked me the question before. They are almost letting the grandfather, just talk. And that's basically what he's doing, because if they interrupt at anything like that, as bad as the state trooper looks right now, you just badgered, if you will, this man who calls them my children.
Gene, I've noticed in a sign before the stop sign letting you know that the stop was coming, so he really had 2 warnings, at least again according to the opening statements.
Oh, why should he have to pay attention to it? He's a police officer. You know, give me a break.
Dripping with sarcasm.
A little bit. You know, honestly, you know, I disagree wholeheartedly if no one's picked up on that with what Greg said, because although there are guidelines, and I respect what Greg had to say, it can't just be, as you said, that you have free reign to drive recklessly, which is what he's charged with.
Because of the potential for loss of life. It's highly foreseeable.
And you cannot say the ends justify the means.
Well, just especially when, look, he's going after a speeder. He's not going after a fleeing felon with a loaded gun who's shooting people. And
well,
he's going
it's a
after
scale.
A speeder.
It's a scale
here. It's 10:05 in the evening, 10 o'clock in the evening on a Wednesday evening. There aren't a lot of cars on the roadway at this point in time. It's not like he was doing it during the peak of business hours that day. And there's a scale. What is a substantial risk, or was there a risk? And in this case, I don't think the risk was substantial when he blew through that stop sign.
Well, this is exactly the argument I think we're going to be hearing in the courtroom. So I'm glad our viewers got a preview of it now. As we go to break, we want to update you on today's 13th juror question. Should police chase speeders? Sometimes these sidebars and objections and having to look at the pictures is an attempt to interrupt the flow of the testimony?
Absolutely, all day.
2 applications.
That is definitively a tactical way of going forward, especially when the defendant's attorney is watching the grandfather say, again, as I pointed out before, that my kids, my children, that's my car, and this tough man breaks down, boom, sidebar, boom. Wait a minute, let's look at the pictures. It's to take away the momentum, the wind out of their sails, and to take away the jurors' attention, because as you pointed out, rightfully so, there are going to be a lot of witnesses here, and they're going to have to remember all of these people. And if you keep interrupting this testimony, that just stops the flow, one, not just of the witness and shakes up a witness, but it also shakes up the prosecutor or the defense.
And I'm going to interrupt you for a second because live action has resumed. Let's listen.
This photo